Hello, everybody. It's a cold Saturday night here in northern Texas for sure. We spent the first part of our day since 6:30 this morning without electricity, but thankfully we have some now, and I'm hoping that our electricity will stay. So hopefully those of you in the pathway are doing good. And let me just make sure my mic is on. Those of you who are watching, give me like a thumbs up or say yes in the comment section of whatever thing that you're looking at or watching from, and let me know that you can hear me loud and clear. Let's see. Let me know that you can hear me loud and clear. Let me know that you can hear me loud and clear. So let's test that. I think you can hear me loud and clear. So give me a yes if you're watching and let me know that you can hear me, please. We have a lot to talk about tonight. I want to talk about the food plate. I've been wanting to talk about this all week. I just haven't had the time to jump on live. For those of you who are just joining, I'm Dr. D, Danielle Zanzarov from South Bay Wellness, and you are here for the live today. And we're going to dive right in and talk about this food plate that came out. So type into the comment section, give me a 1 if you really like the food plate, give me a 2 if you're kind of in the middle, give me a 3 if you don't like the food plate. Put it in the comment section, whether you're watching on YouTube or Facebook or Instagram or where have you. But I'd love to hear what your thoughts are about what's happening with the food plates there. So go ahead and put it in there. I'm just making sure that my mic is actually turned on, but I think that you can hear me. It all seems like it's on and nice and clear. Okay. All right, so let's talk about this food plate. Let's go ahead and dive in on this lovely Saturday evening, wherever in the world you are watching from. So I want to talk about why the new food guidelines, they miss some of the most important variables. So, if maybe you're in the place where you've been eating healthier than ever, more whole foods, fewer processed foods, and yet you're still feeling like inflamed, tired, maybe you feel stuck with your weight, then this is definitely the conversation for you. Because tonight I want to walk through the food guidelines. There are some things I think they get right. I want to talk about some things I think that they overemphasize, and what it is too that I think they are quietly leaving out. But here's the truth, right? Nutrition guidelines, they could be scientifically correct. And some of the numbers on this new pyramid don't actually add up. But they can also, even if they are correct, they can still, fail real women who are in real bodies, who are in real life. So let's just go into that space, right? Because food itself, it does not act in a vacuum, right? Nutrients, they only work when the body can actually receive them, absorb them, and interpret them correctly. So first of all, I love the eat real food. That's kind of what we've been saying forever, right? Eat real food. It makes a difference. Get out the processed food, the ultra processed food, because I don't think there's a nutrition or health expert that you can find anywhere who's going to say, hey, no, eat some processed food. It just isn't that way. And I think that we have become a society that looks for quick, easy things to just grab. And listen, you guys, I am no angel, right? I have my own things where I'm like, oh gosh. And I know I'm not always doing the best thing, right? And sometimes it's like you're stuck between a rock and a hard place. And there are lots of foods out there that are convenient, even though they're not necessarily healthy. And I think that's been going on for a really long time. And food manufacturers, they know how to keep you coming back, right? Put your favorite processed food in the comment section. Tell me your favorite processed food. Let me go ahead and write that in here. What's your favorite processed food? Favorite processed food? I want to hear. So what's your favorite processed food? Put it in the comments section of wherever you are watching today from. But there's a really good book. I think that if you really want to get into understanding the food industry a little more, Michael Moss wrote a fantastic book. When I was teaching at Hofstra University, I used to make my students read this book. It was one of the requirements. And it's got a lot of detail in the book, right? And it's called, I might be mixing up the order, but it's sugar, salt, fat. It could be fat, sugar, salt. I don't remember what the order is exactly, but sugar, salt, fat. And the book goes into how the food industry is really, really smart when it comes to knowing exactly how much sugar, how much salt, how much fat to put into our food, right? And they spend, oh gosh, billions of dollars in trying to figure this out. If you could imagine the money that's spent by food manufacturers to create food that we keep coming back to, and we took that money and we invested it in some other kind of research, maybe cancer research or research for something else, I think we'd end up a lot more beneficial. But if we go back, you guys, let's remember that food corporations, food manufacturers, they are in fact still businesses. So if you own a 401k or you invest in the stock market or you're doing things like that, it is these companies' fiduciary responsibility to actually make money. So it is their job to figure out how to keep you coming back for more and more junk and more processed food. And so it's not just like we don't have willpower or we're weak. It is in some sense that we are manipulated by the processed food industry, right? And of course, there's the subsidies that take place to make less nutrient dense food. I'll put it that way to be polite, right? But junk food, essentially cheaper. They're there, and our government does that on a regular basis, and so we have so much more accessibility. So I am excited to see the new food recommendations, point out and focus and say, hey, let's get back to real food, because I'll tell you that is the most important thing. And I've worked with thousands of clients over my last, almost 2 decades here in practice. I'm still 21. Those of you who are trying to do the math, I am still 21. So, I will tell you consistently, there's never been anybody that I haven't said, hey, eat real food, because it is fundamental. Our body is made up of what we eat. So if we're throwing in dead processed food that's got toxins and things like that, we're adding to our body's burden. And, we're at this point where, number one, our food in general is not as nutrient dense as it used to be, right? So the peach that your grandmother or your great grandmother ate is not the same peach that you're eating today. You'd have to eat multiples of them. And there's actually a study that they've done on this. And I don't remember what the exact number is on it, but we're talking like somewhere between 20 and 50 of those peaches to get the exact same nutrition that they got years ago. So certainly our food is lacking in those nutrients. Now we're exposed to higher levels of toxicity. So now our body's need for nutrients has increased, and yet at the same time, the nutrient value of our food has decreased. So we have this widening gap here, and that widening gap is a really big deal. I know a lot of people will ask me, they'll say, hey, Dr. D, like, do I need to take supplements? Is that really necessary? And I think this is an important thing to point out. The truth is, right, you cannot supplement your way out of a poor diet. So you cannot take a bunch of supplements and think that that is going to be your savior from not having the nutrients that you need in your diet. It just doesn't work that way. It is food first, but we do also need to fill that gap. So I do recommend supplementation. And you guys, if you're like, well, Dr. D, what kind of supplementation do you recommend? And what about for me? And so on and so forth. You guys, we do have an exciting new program that is coming up for those of you who are like, I need more education on what to take and when to take and why to take and how to take. Of course, I'm an advocate for always having exactly what it is that your body needs. That's the work that I do, right? All of our clients, they get effective, efficient results because that's what we're looking at. What exactly does their body need? But we do have some stuff coming down the pipeline that is available for everybody. So if you want to learn more about that, just comment like supplements in the chat of wherever you're looking, and we'll definitely reach out to you with some more information on that. So, okay, so diving in, real food first, absolutely, positively something that we need to consider, right? So let's talk about some of what is in the new food pyramid. I think there is a higher overall protein emphasis. There is a significant representation of animal protein and dairy. And this is where I get stuck a little bit, you guys. Fruits and vegetables are strongly encouraged. Amen, right? And whole grains still form that foundational base. And legumes, like your beans or lentils, those kind of things, those are technically included, but they're actually not centered. So on paper, I think the new food recommendations, they look balanced, but in practice, I don't think it's always practical, right? And it's not always functional. So I think that that's what I want to talk about tonight. So let's dive in first of all to protein, okay? So protein is really important. Okay. Especially, I know many of our followers are midlife women in that 40, 65, 70 range. And protein is something that we really need to focus on, right? Especially as we need it to develop our muscles, which are not, developing as easily as they used to when estrogen was stronger, certainly for building our bone and certainly for, maintaining our muscle mass. It's a key indicator of longevity, right? So your muscle mass will determine, correlationally how long you'll live. So maintaining that muscle mass is really important. That protein is also essential for satiety. It's also essential for metabolic health, right? But here's the kicker, you guys. Source, quantity, and timing, those really matter. So I'm clear, and I know there's all sorts of schools of thought, and I totally get that. Where I side, right, is that, heavy animal protein can be an issue. Okay. You've got the increase in saturated fats. I'm not afraid of the fats, but that can displace the fiber and fiber rich food. It can also create digestive stress for midlife women. And of course, many women are already struggling with low stomach acid, right? Slower digestion, stress related changes to their gut microbiome. So these are all things for us to be aware of because protein is necessary, but more is not always better. And of course, animal protein is not always neutral. I'm always surprised by how many clients come into our practice and we're working with, and they've never had a day where they have not consumed any amount of animal protein. And is a concern for me, right? Because we do want to make sure that we're getting in all the other sources that we need, the phytonutrients, the fiber, all of that is really important for a solid digestive system, for solid health, right? And for longevity. If we look at the blue zones, and the blue zones, that's the cultures where people, they've lived to 100 plus years old. They are eating low animal protein. They are not eating high amounts of animal protein. Now, that doesn't mean that they're not getting in protein, because you can have protein from other sources that aren't necessarily meat, cheese, eggs, that kind of stuff. Okay. But that's what we're seeing actually in practice from these blue zone cultures. Of course, lifestyle and your emotional regulation and your connection to family and community, those things are important, right? The amount of food that you're eating, that is also really important. A lot of times when we are eating processed food, right? Like I said before, if you were here, you caught it, Michael Moss's book on sugar, salt, fat. They know how to have you coming back. So if you're feeling like, oh my God, I can't stop at one cookie, or I can't stop at one chip, or what have you, it's because it was designed to be that way, except that our bodies were not designed to actually take that in. So that's part of the concern. Now, let's be clear, especially for our women who are midlife, like you do need to make sure that you're getting in adequate amounts of protein, right? I'm always recommending somewhere between at least 20 and 30 grams of protein per meal, especially if you are working out, which you should be. And as we are in these later years of our life, then we need to put an emphasis on making sure that we are strength training and lifting weights and lifting heavy, because that is what will move the dial for our longevity. So, how you get that in, though, doesn't have to be complicated. It doesn't mean that you need to always have a bunch of animal protein. Okay. More is not always better. And we do know, so if we get into alkalinity and acidity, we do know that most animal protein will leave an acid ash in the body. And if you're aware of that, the pH balance that the body needs, you'll find out that you do want to make sure that your body has that alkaline state. Okay. So protein is necessary, but more is not always better. Let's talk about the second. This is a really big pet peeve that I have with the new food recommendations, and that is dairy. Like, I am not sure how dairy always gets a seat at the table, because we have to ask ourselves, is it nutrient dense or is it inflammatory? And I think this is where many women feel validated, right? Because, okay, so dairy provides calcium, iodine, protein, potassium, but I've got to tell you, most women are intolerant to dairy products, right? And so when they have dairy products, they're experiencing bloating, they're experiencing, sinus congestion, they're experiencing skin flares, they're having other inflammatory responses, which, could mean GI issues. And the longer and longer you keep your body in that state of inflammation, the more difficult it becomes for your body to rebalance, right? It's like you're just like chipping away day after day after day after day. And so, most of us as adults, we can not digest dairy, okay? And most of us as adults are having that inflammatory response. Now, I know there's different schools, right? And if we go to like the works of Weston A. Price and things like that, we know that there is a difference between commercial dairy that you're going to buy in the grocery store that's been pasteurized, and basically a lot of whatever those dairy benefits might be are essentially killed off, further exacerbating that inflammatory process, versus if you're getting real raw dairy from, a well-produced farm where the animals are taken care of, they're grass fed, they're not given hormones and antibiotics and vaccines and all of that kind of stuff, then we end up with a very different kind of product. But even still, I have seen people who still have, allergic or sensitive responses to dairy. And I will tell you, so whenever we start working with clients, we always go through an elimination protocol. We have to. We've got to get the body back to square one in, what I call not throwing gasoline on the fire anymore. We got to get the fire out, right? And dairy is a tough one for a lot of people. Cheese lights up those pleasure centers of the brain. It tastes good, right? It's nice, it's creamy, so on and so forth. I get it. But we also have to take a look at what's happening in the body and how your body specifically is responding. I'll have clients who have, I will say most people have some response. But some people, if it's like an aged raw dairy, it's been aged for 12 or 18 months, and you can find those at most stores, I believe. They don't have as a response to that. but you still have to consider what that caloric density is of that piece of cheese. Because that, if you have a 1 by 1 little square of cheese, there's a lot of a lot of dairy that's gone in to condense that for you to have that little tiny block. So you do want to be privy to that. So I personally think that dairy itself is optional nutrition. And for many of the people I work with, dairy actually creates inflammation. So I don't think that it should be prominent on the new food guidelines, and certainly not front and center, not a universal requirement. So I will say that. Now, the other thing that I think is certainly underplayed in our new food guidelines is legumes, right? I think that they are undervalued for sure. And this is in the science. This is not made up. This is not just what I think, right? Legumes are important. They provide fiber, they provide minerals, they provide polyphenols, right? They support your blood sugar regulation, they support your gut health, they give you that protein, they support your metabolic flexibility, right? Your ability of your body to burn glucose as needed, glucose and fat. And I think they're probably underemphasized, and this is just a thought. I think they're, often underemphasized because people associate them. They're like afraid of carbs, right? There's this fear of carbs. Now, listen, if you are a middle-aged woman, in that 40, 60, 70 range, like, we actually need to have some carbohydrate for our body because it relaxes our nervous system, which is really important to the foundation of our health. So I also think that when it comes to legumes, there are a lot of outdated digestion myths. And I know there's all sorts of controversy in the nutrition world. And yes, it is true that some people have a more difficult time digesting beans or legumes than others. And I think there's a couple things here that are important to know. So number one, before we go crazy on any kind of food sensitivities, the first thing that we always must do is optimize our gut and our GI system. Because when our gut is intact, when our digestion is happening the way it's supposed to happen, right, then we're able to break down these foods that might be more difficult or harsher on the body if our GI system is not intact. It's the same thing, you guys. Like if we take cooked vegetables versus raw vegetables, in many cases, right? So each of those different vegetables have more nutrient value cooked. Different vegetables have more nutrient value raw. But if your GI system is not at its optimal, I'll see people have difficulty eating larger amounts of raw vegetables where they don't have that same difficulty eating larger amounts of cooked vegetables. And again, it goes back to what is the status of our GI system. And the nice thing too about legumes is they do have that huge amount of fiber. So they are feeding your gut microbiome, which you probably already know if you're watching this, and this is interesting to you, that your gut microbiome is really the seat of your health, your mood, your immune system. All of that comes from there. Now, I do have some hacks for those of you who are like, I have a really hard time. Every time I eat beans, I get really gassy or things like that. First of all, I will tell you that if you are cooking them yourself, you absolutely have to make sure that they are fully cooked. Okay. And then I like to, when I make beans myself, I will add kombu, which is a type of seaweed. And that kombu actually enhances the digestibility. So it makes it easier for your body to break down. There's only one company I know that uses it in their product, and that's Eden, Eden. So if you're going to have canned beans, I do recommend that you get the Eden ones, Eden. Or you guys, a lot of beans are undercooked. So if you're eating beans out of the can, a lot of times they are just ever so slightly undercooked. And so just the act of boiling them and heating them for an extra 15, 20 minutes can help to enhance that digestibility. And again, I know Eden is a little bit more expensive of a brand. I get that. So if you're eating a different a different brand, hopefully organic. Well, we need to talk about that too, right? Hopefully organic. You can add a little piece of kombu in there. And for those of you who are like, kombu, what is kombu? Kombu is a type of seaweed, okay? And you don't taste it. It doesn't give a flavor. You just use a little sheet that goes right into your beans, and you're going to get the benefits of that as well. Put in the comments, tell me what your favorite legume is. What's your favorite legume? Drop that into the comment section. One more thing I want to go back. So I just want to go back to the protein that we were talking about and the overemphasis of protein. And I neglected to point out something that I think is a really big issue. And that is the quality of the animal protein that we are mostly eating. So factory farmed animals, they're not eating a natural diet. They are, they're having the antibiotics and the hormones and all of those different things. They are, they're not giving your body the same benefit as something that is wild, grass-fed, that is taken care of. And that is why I have a pet peeve with the new food recommendations, because I don't think that is emphasized enough. And quite frankly, I mean, if you've been to the grocery store, you know that organic meat is like through the roof in terms of pricing. So we've got to have that balance with other forms of protein that are not just animal protein. Hello, Karen. How are you? Good to have you here tonight. Throw your questions into the comments section for sure. Okay, so we talked about legumes. Let's see what else I want to talk about. So I want to just to point out, I think, legumes are the bridge between nutrition and metabolic health. And I think that they are dramatically underused and have gotten a bad rep in all of the fad diet culture in the fad diet world. And so I think it's time for us to take another look at that, right? Rather than simply focus on animal protein all the time. Now, the one thing that I don't, or that I haven't seen emphasized at all in the new food plate, it's missing the whole part of integrating what's happening with the nervous system, right? It's when you're stressed out, your digestion changes, your absorption changes, your insulin response is different. Whether you're hungry or you're satiated, right? That hunger and satiety signaling, that ghrelin and leptin, that goes astray too. So we could have the same exact food, right? So you could eat the same exact food, but depending on what your nervous system state is, it could actually have a different response on your body. So your stress state, your hormone balance, your mineral status, your gut function, all of that is important when we start to think about what it is that we are eating. So you can eat all of the right foods in the wrong physiological state, okay? And then your body is still going to resist it. Your body is not going to be able to utilize what it is that you are providing for it. And so one of the things I always tell everybody before you start eating, and listen, I know it's not like I've never not eaten my breakfast in the car, or I've never not eaten in front of the TV or in front of my computer or while in a meeting, right? I've been there. I've done that. You guys, I am human, right? I do the same things that everyone else does. But when we do those things consistently, they do impact our body. And so we really want to be present. So I know all of our clients, and I know Karen's out there watching, and the rest of you who are out there watching, you know what I tell you, right? Anytime before you eat, make sure that you bring yourself into a parasympathetic state. You get your body moving from that stress state into that rest and digest state. And so it could be as simple as taking a few deep breaths and making sure that your body is in alignment with the fact that you are about to eat. In fact, for those of you who know me for a while, you know I've got Dr. D's ABCDs of mindful eating, and I'll tell you what they are. So write this down because this is, I think, is really helpful, and it's easy to remember ABCD. So A is for attention. And this is important, you guys, because I don't care what anybody says. Digestion does not begin in your stomach. Digestion does not begin in your mouth. It actually begins with your other senses. So it begins when you see your food, when you smell food, when you're thinking about food, when you are preparing the food. So it's really important before you even begin eating. You pay attention, like, okay, I'm going to sit down and eat. This is why eating on the run is not the best thing for us. So B, right, is breathe. Take a couple of deep breaths before you actually begin eating. Again, bringing your body into that parasympathetic state. And then, of course, C is chew. Believe it or not, this is a really easy one, but we underdo this. We don't do this enough. So I challenge you, if you, depending on where you are in the country right now, if you have not eaten yet today, when you go to eat dinner, go ahead and focus on how many times you chew. I challenge you to chew like 30 times before you swallow. Okay. And chewing is important. Number one, it's that mechanical breakdown of your food. So it is important for your digestion. Number two, it is moving you into a calmer state. Okay. And number three, it is delaying your food intake. So it's giving your body a chance to say, hey, okay, this is going to my stomach. This is what's happening in my brain. All of this is aligned. Okay, I'm eating. Now let me actually process this food. Because again, doesn't matter if you've got the healthiest diet in the world. If you are not absorbing your food or you're stressed out that you're not digesting your food, it doesn't matter. Okay, it doesn't matter whatsoever. So, okay, we did A, B, C, D. D is delay. So before you take your next bite, like maybe take a breath, just take a moment and then go ahead and take your next bite. So I'll recap for you. A is for attention. B is for breathe. C is for chew. And D is for delay. Okay, so that's Dr. D's ABCDs of mindful eating. So, okay. The problem with the food plate is not necessarily the guidelines, right? The problem is the sequence. So the food guidelines as they are, they assume that your digestion is really stable. They assume that you've got a regulated stress response. They assume that you've got metabolic flexibility. And granted, I guess they're assuming an optimal. Unfortunately, most of us are not in an optimal state. Okay. They assume that, many women have all these things in order. And the truth is, nutrition works best after your body is supported, not when it's being forced. So if all of a sudden you're like, oh my God, animal protein has to be my priority. Number one, no, it doesn't. I have very, very, very minimal animal protein in my diet. Okay. But it doesn't have to be that. If you're not breaking down food and you're already having difficulty, forcing your body never ends up in a really good space. Just because you see that there is dairy on the food recommendations and you know that your body reacts to dairy, well, that's an indication that you shouldn't be forcing your body to take it just because it's on the food recommendations. And let me be clear, because I know that certainly a lot of the women that I work with are dealing with thyroid issues. And we know from the scientific literature that there are a lot of women who have issues when it comes to gluten. And I always tell my clients, listen, gluten and dairy, they're like kissing cousins. Typically, if you are reactive to one, you are reactive to the other. And I know it stinks, you guys, right? Like cheese lights up the pleasure centers in the brain. I get it. But if you're throwing gasoline on the fire of your body and not giving it an opportunity to heal, then we're not moving in the right direction or in the right space. And I think that that's really important. So, okay, let's kind of walk through. So here's my suggestions, right? Number one, focus on your digestive capacity. Okay. What works for your body? And that does mean tuning in, right? We have the True Wellness Framework, TRUE, and the T for the True Wellness Framework is tune in. So you've got to start to pay attention. As I always tell our clients, you are an N of one. You are the one person, the one subject in the scientific experiment called your health. Okay. And so it's important to start to get curious. I tell our clients, like, if you realize that the day after you have, I don't know, a sandwich with gluten maybe, and you're now arguing with your spouse like clockwork every day after you have that sandwich, we need to start to take a look at that, because believe it or not, that can be a response, right? An allergic or sensitive response to whatever that was. In this case, I was using gluten as the example. So you've got to pay attention to your body, and you've got to take care of your digestive system. You guys, your GI system is the most important part of your ability to digest food. Okay. And so if it's not intact, then it doesn't matter. You're not getting the nutrients that you need. Your body begins to struggle. You have inflammatory responses. Your immune system begins to crash. Your weight doesn't do what what you want your weight to do. And don't forget your mood. So there is that gut-brain connection. So the more disrupted our GI system is, the worse our mood is. So brain fog, mood swings, all of that stuff. I know everyone says, oh, I'm menopausal or perimenopausal. That's all it is. Well, it can also come from what's happening in your GI system. And, I got a pet peeve. A lot of times I'll have clients who come in and they've been given medications for like anxiety or depression or things like that. And no one's ever said, hey, hey, so-and-so, hey, Donna, how's your digestive system, right? Are you moving your bowels 2 to 3 times a day? Because you should have like 2 to 3 beautiful soft serve ice cream bowel movements a day. That's normal, right? Your body is your GI system. It's a detoxification system. You don't want to have your stuff hanging out in your gut, your bowels for days on end. It is not normal to be constipated. It is not normal to move your bowels every other day. It is not normal I've had clients who come in and they're like, I only move my bowels once a week. And I'm going, oh my gosh, right? Oh my gosh, we've got a lot of work to do. So that's really important. I think it's important to think about as you're building your meals, right? Veggies, I think, are key and critical. Make sure that you've got vegetables. I forget what the number on the plate is. I think it's 2 to 3 servings is the recommended per day. I'm saying like 5 to 7, really 10. You want to get in a higher number of servings of vegetables per day. That's where you're going to get a lot of your nutrients and a lot of your fiber from. And fiber is one of the most critical things that needs to be in your diet, right? It's not the only critical thing, but it is one of the most critical things, along with your protein, along with your healthy fats. The other thing that's really important is your minerals. So, and you're going to get those minerals from those plant foods as well. And that's important. So if you are a middle-aged woman, you do want to make sure that you are paying attention to what your protein intake looks like. And again, you want to make that protein intake easy on your body. And I know there's carnivore diet advocates, and I just can't get behind it. I'm not open. If somebody shows me something that's miraculous, I'm happy to take a look. But I haven't seen that yet, and I haven't seen it across in the scientific literature. And just by virtue of the fact that if you are eating larger amounts of animal protein, that animal protein has to be clean. Otherwise, you are going beyond in terms of toxicity. So that too can run up its cost very quickly. So question all blanket rules, right? Those food guidelines, they are general guidelines. They are not guidelines for you specifically. And you really have to understand what your body specifically needs and what your body responds to. So be really wary and curious and question when you've got those general blanket rules. And also pay attention Pay attention to how food lands for you, not just how it's labeled on a package, but what the impact is on your body. There have been things that I have eaten that should have been fantastic, that were clean, and I'll eat it and I'll be like, ooh, man, whatever was in there or however that was made, that is not an ideal thing for my body, right? So pay attention, because your body is certainly unique. And the truth is, sometimes when it comes to labeling, not every single thing that is in a product is actually on its label. There is a threshold as to what is actually required. But it goes beyond that, you guys. One of my areas of expertise is in high quality supplementation. And I will tell you that doing this almost 20 years now, I have tested so many different supplements, right? And you're thinking, okay, well, supplements should be great. Well, I've tested supplements that are organic, right? That are supposed to be whole food, that are supposed to be fantastic, and they don't test well. So maybe it's in their processing, maybe it's somehow been contaminated, but I'll tell you, like 99% of what's on the market is not ideal. 99% is not ideal. And so we want to pay attention to that. You guys, if you're confused about what it is that you should be taking, then you can always comment supplement in the chat box and we'll help you get squared away and figure it out. Okay, well, what is it that I can do? Where should I begin to look? I mean, if you're taking things that have magnesium stearate or microcrystalline cellulose or stearic acid or food dyes, right? Or artificial sweeteners or things like that, like steer clear, literally steer clear. Those things are, they're helpful for the manufacturer. They're helpful for the flowing so they can produce more in less time. But that doesn't mean that it's helpful for your specific body. And that's what you want to pay attention, because a little bit of poison every single day becomes a lot of poison over time. And so this is why a lot of people, like, they'll start a new supplement, for example, and they were like, oh, wow, I feel great. It's working amazing. And then all of a sudden, like a month or two later, they're like, this thing isn't working anymore. Well, it's likely that the quality of what that is amiss. And so you always want to be aware of that. So guys, you can drop questions in the comments. I'm going to begin to wrap up here. So if you have them, drop them, because I'll answer them right now before we jump off. So the future of nutrition, it isn't stricter rules. It isn't better pyramids or plates or what have you. It's really understanding your body's context. Okay. It's understanding your body's context. So you want to be present to what you're putting into your body so that food becomes supportive for you and your health, not another stressor. Okay. You want food to be supported for your health and not another stressor. So with that, everyone, if you are stuck in the storms and gonna get some stuff this weekend, we've already started here in northern Texas. We've had literally sheet of ice on the ground all day today. I had power outage all 8 hours this morning. I'm hoping that it stays on for the rest of the time. But everyone, stay safe, stay warm, eat well, and focus on how your body is responding to what it is that you eat. Now, see you guys next time. Be on the lookout for our lives. Bye.